So hopefully you can right now see my screen that says 5 things to know while submitting a CFP, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Thanks for the confirmation. So let's start. We just have around 30 minutes on this presentation, 30 to 40 minutes, and let's get to it. So hi, I'm Ankit Gadgil, and I've been volunteering in Mozilla for the last 9 years. I started my journey as a code contributor to the Firefox project. Then I moved on to a lot around MDN, which is Mozilla's developer network. I got into the reps program because I wanted to let people understand how to contribute to Mozilla the way I did. Because the day I started with contributing to Mozilla, I did not have many mentors to look forward to. It was more about looking at the GitHub repositories and understanding the whole process ourselves, and getting to know the best first bugs. Then I moved on to become a reps mentor, and now I've also served like two terms in the reps council that manages the reps worldwide, or the community, Mozilla community worldwide. Now I'm one of the four reps peers worldwide. We have one from Romania, one from Germany, one from Switzerland, and one from India, that is myself. So we have four people who basically manage, who are basically like project managers for the reps program itself. So yeah, I've been doing a lot in Mozilla. Apart from that, I've also been doing a lot in Wikimedia project, on which the Wikipedia system is based. I started there as well, and that is how I got into Red Hat. I work on something called as documentation tooling system that provides automation for documentation on Red Hat platforms. I work as an associate manager and like associate manager for software engineering. And earlier I was a senior software engineer there. And So today's topic, so that's my introduction. And today's topic is about 5 things to know while submitting a CFP. Why did I choose this topic? It's because I've been to a lot of conferences since the last 9 years since I've started contributing to open source in general. And I found one thing that organizers have a lot of things to worry about apart from CFP. And if your CFP is well written, CFP basically is call for papers, is well written, then it becomes easier for organizers to be at conferences, to select you for conferences. And with all that of my experience and a few information from the tech speakers program of which I was part of in Mozilla, I have created a small list for you all to have a look so that you can benefit from this. So let's talk about conferences in general. Let's talk about what is the main reason people attend conferences. The big reason there is, they want to go to conferences to meet like-minded people and industry peers. Specifically for students, it's really important because you can make good connections, in sessions. Excuse me. And then it's easier for students to make that connection in different geographical areas. So going ahead, it's easier to find people and increase their network, or find jobs in that bigger sense. And also conferences give you a good edge on your CV. So that's for students, right? And in general, if you look at people who attend conferences, they want to expand their knowledge. They want to find solutions to the problems that they are solving, probably. More obvious reasons for attending conferences is like to present the work you're doing in your college, your university, or your office, if your office is okay presenting that work outside of your organization. Uh, Basically, it's a good practice to talk about what you're doing to a variety of people, so that it's your work basically gets the outreach that it really deserves. Say a particular student in a university is doing a project. It's a really cool project. The university understands this, but may not be doing a lot to help the student get out there and get the opportunities. So sometimes students have to create a CFP around that project, so that they can submit that CFP in a conference that would value that. And you never know who is listening to your CFP, who is listening to a session about your amazing idea, might take you places. So I feel the best way to achieve all of this is to apply at conferences and contribute as a speaker. Now there are multiple roadblocks there when you want to become a speaker. The number one there is that you should be able to communicate well. Unfortunately, English is the language that everybody understands. Most of the people understand over the globe, and that is in which most of the conferences are based in. There are some regional conferences as well, but they do have good impact, but the English speaking conferences have better impact. So I would highly recommend, this is not a compulsion, right? But I would highly recommend that you work on your English if that is possible, and get your CFP in English. Again, regional languages can be done. It's a bit difficult to find conferences that make a large difference in regional languages. There might be some, but yeah, it's a bit difficult to find. So taking that aside, taking the personality side aside, taking the stage fright aside, if you're okay with all of that, if you're okay with your English, if you're okay to talking to a lot of people, if you're okay to talking online, then these are the 5 things you should know. Let's take a tour on the first thing. The first thing is you want your proposals to stand out, right? What it should convey is basically it should be very easy to understand, and it should be really obvious what your idea is. A lot of times people make or session creators or CFP creators make a error of judgment where they want to complicate their CFP. They want to make sure that their idea is presented in the best light, and while doing that, they end up putting in a lot of jargons into the session itself, or the abstract, or the title, you know, and that basically might just push off a lot of organizers because they do not have much time to have a look at or to understand what a particular jargon means in your session. So basically what it should do is your CFP or your call for paper should convey why this is a good talk, and be very specific. Do not give history on the topic. Nobody wants to read the history on the topic. They do not want to read how did you stumble upon this idea, because that information is for your session. You have 1, 2, or maximum 3 lines to talk about your topic. Look at it as a sales pitch. You know, if you want to write a sales pitch for your topic, what would you write? Say you have an attention span of your user for 5 seconds. You must be seeing a lot of ads on YouTube, right? They have become like smaller and smaller in nature. And now there are like 5-second ads, and that is the attention span of the viewer today. And if you're able to convey something in 5 seconds, that is what matters nowadays. So look at your CFP topic as your sales pitch, or abstract as your sales pitch. Just write what is really important. Do not complicate things. Let's dwell a bit deeper into what actually that means. Writing a catchy but relevant title is really necessary. A lot of times on a lot of blogs, on a lot of videos, when you see about CFPs, they'll talk about this particular point, writing a very catchy title. But there is again a nuance to that. You have to write a relevant title. It should be catchy, no problem, but it should be relevant. If it's catchy and it's not relevant, then there is a problem, you know. For example, if you're giving a talk about Python and you're just writing a very catchy title about let's talk about a snake called Python. It's a catchy title. Maybe attendees, while looking at the agenda or the schedule, come across this topic and learn that is a catchy title to say I'm going to talk about Python. But what if you write, let's talk about a snake? Are they going to understand you when I talk about a Python? No, not for sure, right? They might think you're going to talk about random snakes out there, and they might not come in. So writing that catchy but relevant title is quite important. Look at your abstract, right? So what your abstract is, a lot of conferences, they ask you to write your CFP title, the session title, and then they want you to write a small abstract that actually tells them what exactly you are going to talk about in that session, right? A lot of times some organizers and some conferences also ask you to write description in addition to abstract. So this means they want to know more about your talk. So try and summarize your talk in the abstract. When you want to talk about Python, or you want to talk about Go, or you want to talk about any random thing, try and summarize your talk in that abstract and try and sell that talk in that abstract. So probably just trying to summarize in a way that is helpful for the organizers. And if those organizers want to put that abstract into a particular schedule, after looking at it, attendees should be able to understand why they should give you those 30 minutes, if it is really important for them or not. So what I do is I make a 3-point list to make sure that I'm actually getting this done. What that 3-point list is, I write why my topic is important, maybe in a line. An abstract should be, say, a three-line thing. If it is a 3-line thing, then in the first line, I make sure that I tell the organizers or I tell the attendees in the abstract that why it is important. Second is, what things do you want people to take away from it, is what I focus on. It could be anything about learning, it could be anything about solving a particular problem, but really focusing on that information is important. And the third point I write there is what I plan to cover. Now, this can stretch a bit because, again, you're basically making points to what you're going to plan to cover. But again, you can always shrink it down to minimum number of words. Grammatical play here can help sometimes, but try and make it as compact as possible. I'm not saying it should be very strict to 3 lines, but try and make it as compact as possible. As I said earlier, the attention span of everybody around the world has reduced, and same is for the organizers. And when the organizers are going to look at your abstract, they should understand everything that you're trying to say covered in these 3 points. So again, I have been a software developer and I love formulas. So that is why I created a formula for basically writing your first draft. Now, I found this formula online and I tweaked it a bit. And when I found it, I was like, maybe it will work, maybe it will not. But let's try it down. And then I created a customized version of this. Let's see if it works for you. So the first thing is talking about a really strong statement about why the topic is important at a very macro level, a very high level, and then specific points that you tie around your narrow topic to this micro points. This may be a bit of a wordplay, but let's see an example of what that is. So this talk will cover 2 to 3 most important points of what it should cover, after which you will be able to some concrete audience takeaways. Don't worry, I'll share the slides with you all so that you can always go back and reference it. But this is what it looks like from an example point of view. So when you talk about concrete points, this is the way you are telling the organizers that, oh, look, this is an amazing talk, but you are clearly telling them that what you will be covering. After that comes the audience takeaway. The audience takeaway are like most of the conference organizers and talk selectors appreciate if you are writing audience takeaways. Not a lot of CFPs have them, so this is going to make your CFP stand out. Like this is a very good point for attendees as well, that they'll be really glad to know if you are writing takeaways. They'll decide if they want to invest that 1 hour or half an hour into your session or not, which is basically making them obvious that what they're going to take away from the talk. So that is point number 1. Let's move on to point number 2. Point number 2 is, the best way to prepare yourself to speak at conferences is to prepare well in advance. As soon as you know that I'm sorry. Well, yeah, sorry for that. As soon as you know that you have submitted a CFP for the conference, or as soon as you know that you're going to confirm your spot at the conference, I would highly recommend that you go through your notes and create a session and create a presentation that might want your session to look like something which is important, So the second point is what I call build and own your topic. It's really important to sound confident and also know what you're talking about. A lot of people just send out CFPs without even thinking about the topic. And once the CFP gets selected, they are like, now it's selected. Okay, 90% of the work is done. There is a small presentation they have to make. Maybe it's a 10% of a work. And then what they do is they create some random presentation that they think makes sense. And then they go to big conferences. And there is where it all crumbles down. Sometimes people are not confident talking about the topic. Sometimes the content they have built in does not meet the expectations of the conference organizer. Sometimes the audience has questions that you do not have answers to. A lot of times this may be looked at against you, and sometimes organizers all around the world with conferences have connection networks. They know that if a particular topic is not being presented perfectly, they will make sure that some or the other how your name is there to be looked at cautiously at other organizers. So it's more of you are building your own reputation through your topic. So I would say know your topic inside out. Whatever you are going to present, whatever is your point of view, please make sure that you know it inside out. It's okay to be nervous on stage. Everybody gets nervous, but if you know your topic well, your attendees will completely ignore your nervousness and focus on your topic. And there's a lot of benefits of this. It's a lot of times people know things about a particular topic, but they think that maybe they are not able to present well. What I have seen people doing is before the conference, at least 10 days before the conference, they keep on repeating the presentation once every day in front of a mirror. You do not need to memorize everything. If you know your topic, you can use speaker notes. And it's okay to glance once or twice at your speaker notes, and attendees will be fine with it. The second thing to look for is you should know your audience. Sometimes you can actually guess who are going to occupy those seats at the conference. You can deduce a lot from what the conference is about, what has been the history of the conference, and what kind of people attend this conference. For instance, there is a conference called as DevRelCon, the Developer Relations Conference, which is very specific but not limited to developer relations. A lot of people there, like 90 to 95% of the audience there is going to be DevRel people, but there'll be some other people as well. So what should your talk really talk about? What should it be focused on? It should be focused on DevRel, but it also should have some nuances where if somebody else from outside of the DevRel community is attending, they should not find themselves completely alienated while looking at your talk. So audience relevancy is important. Again, the next point is dwelling deeper into the second point, which is build your own topic. Is the first impressions really matter? Sometimes you have to create your first slide that sets the tone for the next half or 1 hour that you're going to talk about. So if your first slide is engaging enough, if so it could be a meme. It's okay to add a meme if you think your audience are going to understand that. If not, then you can always put in like a video or a very relative image, and then ask your audience what do they think about it. What are their first impressions from that image, that video, and if or a particular graph. If you're talking about sales figures, graphs are amazing. There was an amazing session that I saw about Kubernetes and containers and OpenShift, and the person who was giving this particular talk, she started her slide with shipping containers. With a ship, there was an image of a ship. There were hundreds and thousands of containers on that ship. And she started at what do you all see here? And people like, those are containers, those are shipping containers. She's like, yes, exactly. What do you see when you look at a container? That it is a contained space. It will contain a specific thing, and the other container might or may not contain the same thing, but they're isolated from each other. And that is where she started. That is where she gripped on to the attendees, and the attendees were like, yeah. Now we understand what actually containers mean in the online world or the cloud world, that nothing mixes together. You can keep everything separate and they can still work in their own space and contribute to a larger ecosystem. So that was an amazing way of telling that. So you can think about the topic you're trying to present and try and relate that to an image or the first slide that will set the tone. Practice and get feedback. This is a no-brainer. You should practice. You should get feedback on your content. If you have a mentor, if you have friends, if you have teachers, if you have colleagues, if you have seniors, get them to help you. You know, a lot of people have a lot of knowledge that you can use. They can make your session better. So practice it and while practicing it, you'll automatically feel that something is better working. So I should change the slide or not. You know. Let's move on to point number 3. So the point number 3 is often very overlooked point going ahead. So the point is your bio is super important. A lot of organizers ask who you are, where you're based, what's your email ID, and a small bio about you. What CFP creators normally write is what they do, where they are from, and how did they come to be at the conference, which is okay, which is completely fine. But writing a bio which is super specific to the conference and relevant to the conference sometimes can become a very good tool of showcasing that you belong to the conference speakers, and you belong where there are more speakers that are more experienced than you. Just give me a second, please. For example, so Mozilla organizes a lot of conferences. Red Hat organizes a lot of conferences, and when larger open source companies like these organize conferences, they feel that they should get the best out of the best speakers out there. You know, the lineup of say keynote speakers is so amazing, and their work, the body of their work is so amazing that sometimes you feel, do I belong here? Do I belong in this particular speaker list? You actually do. Do not think that you do not belong. The thing is, even if the keynote has amazing people out there, they started somewhere, and that may be you. You know, you have, this is your start, or maybe this is your middle somewhere, and you have already done it. So be confident. And how are you going to show the organizers that you're confident? Through your bio. You know, write your bio that is very specific to your proposal, and refrain from writing your life's history out there. Do not write where you were born, what did you do in your life, how did you get here. Nobody wants to hear that, because they have their own, stories to tell. What they want to really hear is your topic, and your bio should be very specific to your topic. If you're talking about Python, talk about how did you start with Python, how is Python helping you all, and why do you think it is important for you to talk about Python. The why is super important. Today, all organizations are talking about why they do something. And a very good example of a why is, you all must be knowing Starbucks, right? Starbucks somehow has swept the coffee market all around the world. We had Cafe Coffee Day in India, we had regional coffee shops, but Starbucks came and it just swept it away. Why did they do it? How did they do it? What happened? What was that difference maker for Starbucks? And the difference maker was their why. Just go to, if you have some time, go to the Starbucks website and have a look at why they do what they do. And they wanted to become the third place. They have a philosophy of third place. The third place philosophy is, if a person has the first place as their home and the second place as their office, they should have third place as Starbucks. And Starbucks should give them everything that their home and office has, which is good comfortable space to sit in, internet to give time to their work, and nobody asks, why are you sitting at a Starbucks? That is their why. So try and formulate that why into your bio by saying, why do you want to speak about a particular topic, why it is important to you, and it will click to the organizers. Let's have a look at a small bio. I'll give you 2 examples of how to tweak your bio. Okay. The first example is this amazing person called Chuki Chan, who is an Android developer. She has also helped out Mozilla by helping tech speakers understand what are the nuances of tech speaking. And if you look at her bio, I'm just going to read it fast enough. Like, Chuki Chan is an Android developer with a passion in speaking and teaching. She has spoken at numerous conferences all around the world and has been recognized as a Google developer expert for her extensive knowledge in Android. She runs her own mobile development company, produces delightful apps such as Monkey Write for learning Chinese writing, Heart Collage for snapping photos to stitch into a heart, and FitCat, which gets more athletic the more you walk. So this is a good bio. This gives you clear understanding of who Chuki Chan is, what she's doing for a living, how she is associated with Google Developers Expert, what has she been doing in her life around specifically around technology, because maybe she's going to talk about technology. Now, Chuki Chen says that this is, even if this is a good bio, this can be tweaked to make sure that it is more focused on the why of her choices. So let's look at how she tweaked it. Let's look at the non-black part of the set of the what she's changed there. What she's changed is she is the creator and public speaking newsletter, technically speaking, and then she gives a link and hopes to make the tech industry a better place for encouraging more underrepresented minority to speak and be visible, right? So she is not specifically mentioning her projects. She is mentioning what her why is. She's clearly telling us that those projects that she has done are important, but she has a larger goal. She has a larger goal of making the tech industry a better place by encouraging more underrepresented minorities to speak and be visible. And that is why she wants to speak at the conference. And that is why she's doing what she does. And this is an amazing bio to the first one, right? So I'm not saying your bio should be so comprehensive, because probably in the starting of your student careers or in your university time, or even when you're starting as a developer, an analyst, or or you're even starting your own company, you might not be able to boast of a lot of things, but you should be absolutely able to boast of why you're doing something. And that is what people really like. If you are able to add the why to your CFP, to your bio, then organizers will take you seriously for sure. And they will know that you belong in that immensely amazing lineup of speakers out there. Let's talk about number 4. It's called choosing the right conference. I'm not saying that you should not apply to a lot of conferences, but I am saying choosing the right conference is really important. A lot of conferences, they sponsor their speakers. What does that mean? Is that some of the conferences, they sponsor food for the speakers when they are at the conference. Some conferences sponsor accommodation. Some offer travel. Some offer travel grants. Some offer all of it, like completely sponsored conferences. If a particular conference is pushing out tickets on the conference and attendees are paying money to get at the conference, as a speaker, you can ask them to sponsor. The reason is they are making money out of it, and you as a speaker may not be getting any money or may not be getting paid. So the best way of getting something out of it for yourself is asking the conference to sponsor you in some or the other way. Say sponsor your stay, sponsor your travel, or at least sponsor your food. A lot of conferences are outside India, or maybe they are outside of your city or the place you live in. And there is travel included. There is some amount of food expenditure included. There is some amount of accommodation expenditure included. And probably a good conference will give you that sponsorship. Now, if you want to add CFPs and you're okay shelling out your own money, absolutely go ahead and do it. But if you're not okay with that, if you think that you need some sponsorship, talk to the organizers of the conference if they can sponsor you. Say after you get your CFP approved. But a lot of conferences in front tell you on their website that they will be sponsoring or not. There are some websites out there that collect all this information from conferences, and they give you a nice collage of information where they will tell you what the conference name is, what it is about, who are the organizers, and if they sponsor stay, accommodation and food or not. So choosing that right conference is really important. I would highly recommend that if you have a CFP ready, or if you are having to write a CFP, you want to apply to conferences, do not wait. As soon as you know a CFP is open, submit it, and submit often. It's okay if a CFP gets rejected. I have talked at numerous number of conferences all around the world for the last 9 to 10 years. My success ratio of getting selected is 2:10, 2:8. For every 8 CFPs I submit, only 2 get selected, which is around 25%, right? 25% of my CFPs are getting selected. So this means 75% of my CFPs do not get selected. That does not mean I'm not submitting to CFPs, because there are different conferences. Some speakers might not relate. Some organizers might not relate to the topic I'm putting in, or they think it is very naive, or maybe it is very complex, or maybe it is not right for their audiences. If your CFP gets rejected, ask the organizers why did they reject it. Do not ask them to select it. It's okay if they get rejected. You want to get some feedback from them. So the next time you're adding a CFP, or you can make changes using that feedback. Feedback is really important, specifically the critical feedback. So if you right now, if you have an idea that you feel enthusiastic about, and you have an event that you want to speak at, do not overthink it. Just write a CFP and submit it. Rejection doesn't necessarily mean anything. It might just be a step forward for your event or your session. Whenever you get rejection, get some feedback, refine your CFP and resubmit it. So that is what I said, refining and resubmitting is the key here. Let's come to the final point. I know I've been speaking for a long time, and I just want to put across this particular final point, which a lot of CFP writers do not do. And why I'm giving you this information is because this has proven very useful for me. It has helped me make my CFP stand out. And it is a video of you presenting. If you're presented at a particular conference, or if you have presented online, or you can, or if you have not done it, record a small information video about you presenting some topic. This will give the organizers the idea of who you are, how you speak, and if your tone and the words you use in English would be very easily understandable by the attendees or not. Now, why I'm saying that is because not every conference happens in or is organized in English speaking countries. A lot of conferences are organized in Central Europe, where there are non-English speaking countries: Germany, France, Spain, Bulgaria, Romania. All of these countries and many, many, many more are very heavy on their regional languages. They want and they emphasize on their regional language. They also emphasize that the attendees might not know English very well. So if you have a video of you presenting a particular topic, this will give the organizers a good look at how you present, the choices of words you have, and probably if their audience will be able to understand you or not. Now this is like a double-edged sword. If you create a video of you not presenting well, it is not going to work for you. So do not send it. If you have a video that in which you're presenting very well, you're speaking out very nicely, and you're confident that this video will maybe make a difference for you, only then push out that video. You can, if you do not have a video, if you have a write-up about your topic, or if you have written something, if you have submitted a paper somewhere, maybe give a link to them, just for some additional context. A lot of organizers ask you in the CFP submission form, would you like organizers to know something more about you? And there is where you can push this out. Do not push this out in your bio or your abstract. If ever they have given you an extra field of do you want us to know more, or is there something you want us to know, or something extra information kind of a box, push it out there. If it is there, amazing, you can push it out. But I would highly recommend the next time you give your talk at any of the conferences or any of the sessions or online, like I'm doing right now, or to your friends, or in the Mozilla club you have, or any of the sessions, try and record it. Once you have recorded it, you'll know how you talk and what are the changes you have to make. Look at the video twice or thrice and make sure that it changes. And sometimes, what I've seen people do is, even if they are not presenting at a conference, they record themselves giving that presentation on their laptop or on their machine itself. This way, they can easily refine what they're talking about. So once they have that perfect video out there, they'll upload it to the cloud and send out the link to the organizer saying that this is me talking about a relevant topic or the same topic or some other topic. Please have a look. Maybe this is helpful. So by sharing this kind of information can give you that extra edge, and I do not know if all of you are students or not, but I'm expecting you are. And I would highly recommend that if you have an idea, if you learned something from your project, if you have learned something new in your free time, try and give it a shot by creating a session out of it. Even if it is not accepted today, it will be accepted tomorrow, sometime for sure. And this will give you the much needed edge over the immense number of students who are going to find job or who are going to create their own startups going ahead. This will boost your confidence. This will also help you talk in the language you want to be comfortable in. This will immensely help the way world looks at you. And once you know, and once you are very confident about what you're talking about, once you are very confident about the topic that you are really passionate about, people will know. For example, you can talk about Rust, you can talk about Python, you can simply talk about how to create CFP, just like I'm doing right now. I'm not talking about a technical topic today. I'm talking about a very non-technical topic, and I want everybody to understand what I'm trying to do. If you look at all my slides, there is a big thing out there. I write very minimal words in my slides. The reason for that is I want all of the audiences to focus on what I'm saying rather than spending their time on reading my slides. And normally it works in a one-to-one situation, in a physical situation very well, when you have a lot of space, when your attendees are sitting, you're standing there, and you're presenting, you are presenting as animated as you can be, and you are adding various examples that are not in their slides. Once the audience has read those 5 words on your slide for the next 3 seconds, you have their attention for the next 2 minutes. And that is really important. Your presentation actually shows what kind of a presenter you are. Your slides show what kind of a personality you are. If you want to focus on the topic and why you're speaking about the topic and why you're the best person out there to be speaking about this, or why you want to become the expert about that topic in the industry, you want your audience to look into your face and listen to you rather than reading your slides. So again, this is not a thing which you should be doing if you do not believe in this. It's okay to put in a lot of words in your slide and then read it out for your audiences. Sometimes it's important to give information. You cannot condense it, so it's okay. But if you can, do condense it. This is my personal experience that it works really well against n number of words into your slide. And that was the presentation. Thank you so much for listening to me. We just finished on time, and I have a few more minutes to take questions if you have any.
Hello, sir.
Yeah, I can.
Yeah, my question is, if I have an idea, how much research work do I need to do on that topic in order to confidently present the gist about that idea? Like, how much is enough to present about that idea?
Sure, that's an excellent question. May I know your name, please?
So my name is Rupesh.
Hi, Rupesh. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for the question. So Rupesh's question is about how much research is good enough. And there's nothing called good enough research. There'll be so much more information you'll find out onto the internet and from your peers and from the industry experts about a particular topic. But The question is, where do you stop for a particular session? And the answer is, decide how complicated your session is, or whom this session is for. So if you're talking about Rust for beginners, then you have set yourself a scope, right? So it should only focus on basics of Rust for beginners. If it is Rust for intermediaries, you should focus on crates. You should focus on why Rust is doing what it is doing, how it is being implemented worldwide. And if it is for if it is for advanced audiences, then you know what to do. So essentially, what I'm trying to say is, first, when you're writing your CFP, when you're deciding what to talk about, decide the scope of it, how much you're going to dwell deeper into the system. Now, the answer of how much you're going to dwell deeper will come from two major factors. The first factor is whom you are presenting for, what your audience is. If you remember, there was a slide called as know your audience. This is where it will come in handy, is if you already know what kind of audience is going to be there, now you know that if it should be a beginner specific presentation or an advanced specific presentation. Also, the second part that will influence this decision of your scope is your knowledge itself, how much time you have to research. You can get all the information all around the world on Rust. There are major number of books written on Rust, but you should decide what your scope should be. Should it be only about Rust, or should it be about how to use Rust in WebAssemblies? So decide the scope of the topic you have, then look at your audiences also, and then decide what should be the scope of your research. And once you think that there is a theme to your presentation, that normally what I follow as a theme for my presentation is I tell the audience why I'm here to talk to them about this particular topic. Then I talk about what this topic is. Then I talk about how they can use this topic. And then I talk about the ultimate thing that they can get out of it. That is why I start with the why first. Really important. Audience should know why they are attending your talk. If they understand that they share the same why with you, or nearly similar why with you, you have a really strong connect. And how much ever research you have done will be reflected in your session. So they will never say, this was not enough research, because you are there to talk. Own your stage, own your presentation. You are the person who is going to decide the scope. You are the person who is going to decide how much research goes into it. Do not worry about people challenging that research. Okay, so how much research is enough is something that you have to decide, depending upon two factors. Number one, what is the topic talking about? What is the scope of the topic? And the second, the audience that you're going to talk about. Does that answer your question, Rupesh?
Yeah, sir. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. Any other questions?
Good morning, sir. My name is Abrar. My question is that a typical one, the simple one, that we in our life, we take decisions, right? We know those are wrong, but we still do. And if I want to focus my topic, that those things, that's a common thing you're doing wrong and you should do right. What are the chances that I'm catching their attention?
Good. Okay, perfect. So if I understand your question correctly, your question is, what if my topic is a very common one, and how do I grab that attention of the attendees and make them listen to me, even if it is a common topic that I'm talking about? Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So again, I would like you guys to know, like you all to know, that if you are passionate about something, then write about it, create a CFP around it, create a presentation around it. Then once you have done that, try and refine the CFP or the presentation itself. How will you refine it? Is have a look at other people who are talking about the same topic. What are they including in their sessions? Is there something that you have not included that they have, and you feel that which is important? Or is there something that you are including and nobody else is? And is that thing really important? Try and make your CFP as unique as possible. Now, we have to really understand that while making a CFP really unique, while making a presentation really unique, you do not go off-road from the topic. Just for the sake of it, do not make your topic unique. Make your topic unique by making it relevant to the topic. For example, we had a slide that said, write a catchy title, but a relevant one. That is the same thing applies here. If you want to talk about a very common thing, talk about it, no problem. You learn more when you are giving people presentation on particular things, but try and make it unique. Try and put in some extra bits of information that are unique to the topic. This will require research, by the way, because you're talking about a very common topic that people have been talking about, right? So try and research more, try and find out that a few things that other people are not talking about, or you think your audience should know about that particular topic. If you feel that, okay, I'm not going to look at what people are talking about, I'm going to have a look at what I'm talking, then your research has to be very specific around things that people might easily overlook, and include that in your topic and emphasize on those things that you have researched, on those extra bits of information that you have found out, so that you are the person who is talking about a common thing, but in a very unique manner. There are multiple ways of doing that, and I would highly recommend having a look at. There is amazing amount of information online about how to make your talk interesting, or what is how to add a few things that will make people attend your talks. So have a look at that information, have a look at those videos online, and that are going to help you. So the answer, in short, to your question is, if you're talking about a common topic, try and make it unique by adding bits that you think audience might appreciate. Give that session to your friends, talk about that session to your friends, show them, get a review, see if those unique things that you have put in your CFP is also appreciated by the people who are reviewing it. If someone comes in and saying, oh, no, I know about this already, and someone might not, there is a 50-50 chance that your audience might not have heard about it. So adding something unique to your presentation will really help you. Does that answer your question?
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
Okay, perfect.
Hello, sir. So there is a question from Satwik Palai. That is, sir, you asked us to be more precise in our CFP. How can we ensure that we are justifying the content rather than beating around the bush?
Okay. So the answer to that question is, if you know your topic, you will not beat around the bush. You will always focus on the content. So I would highly recommend to know your content in and out, know your topic in and out. We had a slide about that as well. Once you know what your topic is, you will, what I do normally is, there's a small thing I do, right? If I have to write a CFP about a particular topic, I open a text editor and I start writing whatever comes to my mind around that topic. I start writing about it, just a draft. Once I've written the draft, once I've had enough information about that draft, about that topic in the draft, I try and remove all the noise around the topic. Grammatical words, sentences that might stretch longer, and an idea that is being explained in 2 lines but can be then condensed into a single line, something like that. So I try and condense that information as much as I can. Once I've condensed it, I have a small abstract of information with specific points. Maybe first line is not related to the second line because first line has already been condensed from 5 lines. Now that I have a number of points written about in my abstract, what I do is I choose the 3 best things I want to talk about from that abstract, and I push it out there. Now there is a cycle of review. If you have a friend, if you have a mentor, if you have a teacher, if you have someone who can review this, show them the larger abstract and the smaller abstract, and just ask them, do you feel that I have done justice to the smaller abstract as compared to the larger one? And then give you some review. If you do not have anybody, if you do not have time to get this done, make your best judgment over the best 3 points you want to take out from that larger abstract and push it out. Maximum what will happen is you'll get rejected. Once you get rejected, ask the organizers why you got rejected. They'll give you some information, refine it again. And meanwhile, you can also review it. Maybe you get accepted and you made the right decision. So it's really important to condense that information, but also keeping your mind open and writing your draft first. So write your draft, write whatever comes to your mind, then start condensing it to the minimal level you can, and then push out the first 3 or 4 points that you would want your CFP, your organizers to know. In this session, I did give a formula, right? That what your 2 to 3 lines of why this topic is important and what are the audience takeaways. There is where the 2 to 3 lines of the abstract will come in. Does that answer the question?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay, perfect.
Sir, Mr. Shaktikanta Das has a question. What are some of the best conferences which would allow students?
Okay. So in the conference world, they do not give a really good emphasis to if you're a student or not, if you're a working professional or not. What they emphasize on is your topic good or not, and will you be able to attend? So as a student, if you're able to attend that conference, it doesn't matter if you're a student. Again, a lot of times organizers do look at your bio thinking about, oh, if you are, say, an engineer at Google, so probably they'll give them preference over students. But a lot of organizers today, a lot of conferences today are also giving chances to beginners. So if you know that a conference is giving chances to beginners and students, specifically if that is written on their website, you do give this information in your bio. Tell them that you are a beginner, you are a student. If they do not write anything specific about that, it's okay. It's okay if you do not want to mention that you are a student. Just write that you're a professional. If they ask more deeper if you're a student or not, you can tell them. It's up to you if you want to give that information and how to use that. Sometimes that information can be useful. Sometimes restraining from giving that information can be useful. Ultimately, they are going to find out. It's okay. But your first point should be to tell the organizers what the topic is, rather than making them have a biased decision on the profession you are in, or if you're a student or not. A lot of times, a lot of students can give way better presentations, way better sessions than industry professionals. And organizers have come to know about this. They have come to know that the topic is important, that the person giving the topic is important and not the background. So the answer is, if go to the conference's website, have a look and try and find out if they give preference to first time conference sessions or students. If they do, mention it. If they have nothing like that out there, do not give them information which will have them make a biased decision. Again, to boast that, as I said earlier, a video of you presenting will be highly helpful. If you present really well, they might not even look who you are as a student. They might just give you a chance. Does that answer the question?
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, sir, there is another question.
Yes.
Good morning, sir. Ajay here. My question is, while we are giving a presentation, which of the following will give a better impact on the audience? Pictures or videos or graphs, or should I give more importance on my words?
Okay. So it depends upon what your style of presenting is. It also depends upon the topic itself. So there are multiple styles presenters present. One of the styles is, some people would like to put in a lot of pictures and think that explaining those pictures will help them explain the topic. Now this type of style will work with audiences because this will keep them engaged. But once you are done with your session, sharing those slides with pictures might not click for an audience member if they are looking at it 30 days later, so that is one style. If you want your audience to remember what you just said, then you should be really good at explaining what that picture is, so that your audience remembers. The other thing is mixing pictures and words, which is the stuff that I've been doing sometime. I've not had a lot of pictures in this particular session because it was a step-by-step thing. So it depends upon how you. It also depends on the topic, as I said earlier. But if you want to have pictures and you can explain the pictures really well, put in the pictures, put in a few lines about the picture as well, so that if you're sharing that session slides with your attendees and they look at the picture, and if they get the reference of those few words, there may be a chance that they will be able to remember what you said from that few letters of reference. The third style is writing text only, which we have seen in a lot of presentations where like project presentations and all that, because there is so much information to give, you cannot condense it. And it is okay to do that as well, because maybe whenever after the session the slides are shared, it is really important for the audience to know what those points were rather than them listening to you. It is important that they read what is in the slide, because and then coming to the topic, whatever topic you have chosen and whatever your style is, mix that and decide what is the best way. There is no best way to do this. The best way is the way that works for you, and this will come from experience. This will come from the more sessions you give. You'll come to know if pictures work best for you or words work best for you, or a mixture of pictures, videos and words work best for you. Now, I would like to say one thing here. The problem about including videos in your session is sometimes they require sound. Not all the videos require sound. If they do not require sound, then it is okay. But sometimes they do, and then it becomes a technical difficulty. That you have to share that sound also with the audience. If the sound is not working, then the video is not working for you. So maybe try, if you're adding a video, test it out before the session itself. That are you able to share your audio or not? If the audio is synced in with the video or not? All that. Clear out the technical difficulties and then add a video to your session only. Why I do not add videos in my sessions is because it takes away the audience attention from me. If I'm talking about something and I tell them, okay, let's watch this video. Now they have shifted their focus from me and my slides and the topic to the video. And now they are looking at the video, trying to make sure that how this video is relevant to the topic we are listening to. And half of the time, the video is already gone till all 100% of the attendees have come to a point where now they understand why this video is relevant. Half of the video is already gone, and maybe it is already gone and some of them have understood the video, some of them haven't understood the video, some of them have completely gotten distracted because there was a video, So I personally think adding a video to the slide is a bit difficult for me. It takes away the attention span from my audience. So I do not like putting it there because, again, I have to play the video, tell them to look somewhere else. After the video, tell them to look at me again, which is a lot of work for the audience. They should not be doing the work. You should be as the presenter. They should be very comfortable. Your audience will understand your session, the things you're talking about, only if they are comfortable listening to you, and only if they feel that this is important of what we are listening. Does that answer your question?
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
Okay,
Sir, there is a last question, I think.
Yeah.
Good morning, sir. Abhilash here. Sir, my question is that how to filter out specific research points while preparing a conference after knowing the scope of the session and the audience?
There are two ways you can do this. Way number one is, as I said earlier, write an abstract, filter out the points, try and condense the language so that it's no longer can be condensed, and then decide what is the scope of your presentation or your topic, and then take the best 3 to 4 points that you feel are the best representation of the topic. If you have time, get it reviewed from people. As I said earlier, share the condensed abstract with the reviewer. Share the 2 to 3 lines that you have called out from that abstract with the reviewer and ask them if they think you have done the right thing. You know, maybe they'll give you a different perspective. If you do not have the time doing that, be the best judge of your own judgment. You know, and the second way of doing that is really limiting what you want to achieve from the talk. That is why I said the why comes in. If your why is, I want my audience to know why Python does not have multi-threading in its purest form. This is the topic, consider. And so this is the scope of your topic. The topic is multi-threading in Python, you know, and the scope is why it is not there in its purest form. Then you will automatically know what are those 3 best points that are relevant to your why statement, why you are giving this talk. So say the first point you think is something around multi-threading, then you know it is on the path of the why you have decided. But say it is generic about Python's history, you know, then you might think, okay, I do not need to involve this particular point in my topic or in my abstract because it is history and not specific to multi-threading, which is my why. You know? So try and create a statement of why you are giving this talk and why your topic has this scope. Then on each point in your abstract, decide if that point justifies of the relevancy with your why statement or not. So there are 2 ways of doing it. Obviously, the second way is very complex. It requires you to go through a why statement, add a why statement, and then decide if your points are relevant or not. The first way is easier, you know, but again, both of these ways work. You can choose whatever you can. Now, I'm not saying these are the only 2 ways. There may be more ways of doing this. These are the 2 ways I normally use. Does that answer the question?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Do you all have any other questions?
Sir, I think this is it. They have asked all the questions in the chat.
That is perfect. Awesome. Thank you so much for having me here, everyone. I'm really glad that I could, share my knowledge with you, share this particular topic, which is non-technical. So I will share these slides, and before we end the session, I would like to tell you all that the slides have a few more points. For example, it has various conferences you can be at, how you can write your CFP, some detailed guidelines about writing CFP, some references I've taken from different links, you know. So that is what it is, and I will share these slides with you. I'm going to stop sharing now. Okay.
So thank you, sir, for your precious time, and thank you for giving such a beautiful talk.
No problem. I'm happy. Let me know. I will also share my email ID with you all. So to the organizers, they already have my email ID. So if anybody wants to talk to me directly, you all can share the email ID with them, and they can send me an email. The best way to talk to me about these technical stuff is through my email, and I'll be happy to help out.
Sir, we'll be sharing your email ID with everyone.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.